Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
The Batman, new movie out now on HBO Max and video on demand in theaters still, I'm sure, for those that want to venture out into the real world and see a movie with strangers. New movie, directed by Matt Reeves, written and directed by Matt Reeves, the director of 2 of the 3 most recent Planet of the Apes movies, which I absolutely love that franchise, that little 3-movie chunk of Planet of the Apes movies. Not enough people are talking about that franchise. He also directed Cloverfield, Let Me In. So a director that I like. Batman, rewatched all of the Batman movies also this week, so a character that I've gotten very familiar with, again, reacquainted myself with once more in preparation for this movie. A movie that I was kind of like lukewarm excited for because DC in general, the movies that DC and Warner Brothers are putting out are kind of hit and miss. Primarily the movies that are directed by Zack Snyder's are big misses for me. So I was more hopeful given the fact that this was directed and written by Matt Reeves. And I have to say, despite the fact that I have problems with this movie, it is a really good Batman movie. I did enjoy it overall. But that is to say, in my re-watching of all the Batman movies, is that there aren't that many good Batman movies to begin with. Let's be honest. There is a lot of garbage in the Batman oeuvre of films. And I'm not even just talking about the Zack Snyder stuff. Some people love the Zack Snyder stuff, but a lot of the Batman movies from the 90s were just garbage. The franchise really took a nosedive, and and even that, a lot of the older stuff doesn't hold up. But this one, I would say, is kind of a cross between the Christopher Nolan Batmans, where it's trying to be more of a grounded take. I would say in a lot of ways this movie is even more grounded of a take than, in some ways, than the Christopher Nolan Batmans. But also there are moments of this movie that feel like it is paying homage to, or at least having the energy, the vibe of the cheesy version of Batman. Not that this really gets super cheesy. It always but it tries to ride this line, in my opinion, where it's trying to do both. It's trying to kind of give reference to the cheesy parts of Batman, while also trying to keep it very realistic. I mean, as an example, we have the Penguin and Catwoman in this movie, who are, I mean, the Penguin, aside from being a fat guy, doesn't really resemble the Penguin a la Batman Returns, where you have Danny DeVito playing like a penguin-looking man. And then the same thing with Catwoman. Like, Zoe Kravitz in this movie is just wearing like a cat burglar mask with, just the seams. The way the seams poke up on her mask make it look like cat ears. Very subtle reference to both the Penguin far less, and then Catwoman a little bit more, because at least you see the ears. And then Batman is wearing the bat suit. It's a different version of the bat suit, but it's still. In the real world, nobody would wear a bat suit if Batman didn't exist and there was a billionaire that was going to sneak out at night and do these things. It wouldn't have those pointy ears. Like, there are no reason for pointy ears other than the aesthetic of the bat suit. So in that way, it's trying to ride the line of like real and not real. There's also things that happen in this movie that are, if I'm supposed to take this movie as being like an honest, real take of what it would be like if there was an actual Batman, there are aspects of this movie that are just bonkers, bonkers for real, trying to be real life, but pretty standard practice for like an action movie. And I'll talk about those things in spoilers, but when I talk, which I will eventually talk about spoilers. But overall, I like this movie. Again, a lot of problems with it. Like, I think Robert Pattinson's a great Batman, but he is like Requiem for a Dream Batman. Like the fact that they're using Nirvana music, Something in the Way, that song, but then he looks like he's an emo from the 2000s, like which is a completely different genre of music. He doesn't look grunge. He looks emo. He looks like he has a heroin problem. But still a great Batman. There's problems with Commissioner Gordon. Like, for some reason, Commissioner Gordon is doing a Batman voice as well throughout this entire movie. So there are, like, issues I have with this movie. But then, and then it's, like, trying to imitate other better movies in a lot of ways. So let me just get into it. I enjoyed the movie, despite the fact, like, there are moments of this movie where I'm like, this is horrible. And then there's moments where it's like, oh, this movie could have been epic. This could have easily been the best Batman movie. But I think it's trying to ride the line of kind of still holding on to some of the cheesy aspects of the Batman character, as well as trying to at the same time be like a Seven or like a Zodiac. Like, this movie is doing an impression of those movies, similarly to how the Joker was doing an impression of like Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. Although I like the Joker a lot better than this movie. I think Joker pulls off that kind of imitation better than what this movie's trying to imitate in Seven and in Zodiac, which I find to be far superior films, both of which are more detective movies, which this movie, Batman himself, is supposed to be more of a detective type of a character, not as much of an action type of a character necessarily. And this movie, I would say, is probably the most detective-ish out of the live-action movies. I haven't watched the animated films. It feels the most noir, like classic noir, and I appreciated that. I appreciated that it was going for that kind of a tone. But at the same time, it's trying to have its cake and eat it too. So it's trying to have it both ways. It's trying to be like this supposed super grounded, realistic take on the character, while also, it's still got its feet firmly planted in comic book land. Which is okay, I guess. It's just I felt it was off a bit. But other than that, I enjoyed it. Also, this movie does what I absolutely hate in all movies, but it generally happens in action movies. Almost every single superhero movie does it, and that is filming action scenes in the dark to where you really can't see the action. Like, the choreography of these action scenes is pointless. Whoever was hired to choreograph the action scenes, it doesn't matter because you can't really see what's going on. They may as well have animated the words pow and biff and, the cartoonish onomatopoeias of people getting hit, because you can't really see what's going on in a lot of the things. You see little highlights on people's bodies moving around here and there, and it kind of gives the impression that it's a cool fight scene, if only you could actually see the fight scene. And this movie, from front to back, top to bottom, start to finish, is dark. I mean, tonally it's dark, but also it is like every scene is very like dark. It's dark everywhere. Dark. Like, very low light film, which makes it hard to see, which I'm not a big fan of. Although, there's only very few parts, like only really one part that I can think of off the top of my head where it felt like they were doing bad CG. There's a scene in this, I'm going to spoil stuff. I'm going to talk about details, so bear with me. There's a scene where Batman needs to base jump off of a building, and this squirrel suit magically appears on him, which I thought was kind of stupid. Just all of a sudden, his suit is like puffy and a squirrel suit. But at the same time, it's like, whatever, it's Batman, okay. They didn't want to show it. It's I don't know. They didn't have a creative way to show that transformation or whatever. And he base jumps off of this building, as Batman is one to do, which is fine. Squirrel suits, I get it. Plausible. This is realistic. Squirrel suit is something that they would use, sure. But still, you're going really fast in a squirrel suit. And there's this scene where he base jumps off of this building, squirrel shoot, flying through down the street, and like at the last minute throws the chute open, right as somebody who's base jumping will do. Throws the chute open. In this movie, the parachute doesn't do anything to slow him down because that parachute immediately gets caught by a train, like an elevated train track, which swings Batman up to hit the bridge that it gets caught on, which, if we're going to be in a real world type of a movie, if this is supposed to be like some realistic take on Batman, he would have died instantaneously. Whatever speed he was going in his squirrel suit being amplified by being caught on a bridge and then swung up into the bridge itself and then gets flung down the street where he gets up and he's like hurt a little bit. And now a quick word from our sponsor. Now you can wear The Many Faces, original art by Ray Taylor. Select pieces from the ongoing series of abstract ink paintings. All products made with high-quality materials, made right here in the USA. Go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch to browse the entire collection and save yourself an extra 10% when you check out by using coupon code RTSTMF. So once again, go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch and save 10% when you use coupon code RTSTMF. And now, back to our show. Like, that's one of the aspects of this movie where it felt like they were trying to do both. It's like, first off, the character Batman doesn't have superpowers. He's just a rich person. He's a normal human being that just happens to be rich. And if we're to believe that, if this movie is to be trying to get us to believe that this is like a plausible real-world take on Batman, then he would have died instantaneously the moment his parachute got stuck to that bridge and he got flung and hit the bridge and then goes flying down the street. But whatever. I get it. Superhero movie. The other bad part of that scene is like it's the worst CG. It's clearly a rubber person, which is another thing that I'm not a big fan of, where it's like you can clearly tell the way people are moving, like the physics are wrong. They look like they're made of rubber. That was a scene that specifically stood out to me as being very fake. And just like it just could have been handled a lot better. Like, the parachute didn't need to catch on the bridge and fling him and bash his body. Like, it could have been a clean landing for him. But whatever. Also, another part of this movie that's like, okay, I just have to, like, completely not believe. Like, if that happened in the movie Seven, like, Brad Pitt base jumping and then his parachute gets caught, like, he's dead. And this movie's trying to be Seven. This movie's trying to be Zodiac. And there's another scene where if it were to happen in Seven, if it were to happen in Zodiac, the people would be dead. So dead. And that is when C4 explodes in this movie. There is a scene, there are two scenes specifically. There's a scene where there's a funeral happening, and one of the DAs has like a collar put on him with C4 attached to it, and he's got to get, I forget what his mission was, he crashes this funeral where Batman is, Like, he turns into the bat suit or whatever, and he comes out because, like, oh, we got another letter for Batman. It's like these Zodiac-type letters that are left with, like, ciphers on it. And there's a moment where that collar explodes. Batman is literally face-to-face with the guy, like, as close to my face as the microphone is. That's how close this human being in a bat suit with the face, the chin aspect, and neck aspect are pretty vulnerable areas for this human being, is face to face with C4 as it explodes. And all that happens is that he gets knocked out for a bit. And not only does he just get knocked out for a bit, where do they take the Batman body that just got exploded in this church? They don't take him to a hospital or a doctor or even a veterinarian. They take him to, like, the precinct, and they put him on a table in one of their interrogation rooms where he's just knocked out, and all the cops are in that room. By the way, none of which on the entire trip from the funeral church all the way to the cop precinct, wherever that is, at no point any cop tries to look under the mask. Other Batman movies have, like, shown, like, booby traps, like, where people try to take the mask off and, like, shocks them. This movie doesn't have any of that stuff. It's just there's, like, a cop that literally says, like, oh, maybe we should check. And I'm like, you waited this long to check? First off, he was in an explosion, and you didn't take him to a hospital? Like, he guaranteed no physical lacerations or anything from the debris of this metal collar, but also no internal bleeding, no head trauma, no concussion. He's just good. Just give him some adrenaline, and it'll be fine. I get it. It's a comic book movie. But, like, you can't try and do this, like, impersonation of Seven, trying to make your movie look like Zodiac, trying to ground it in this way. The Batmobile is just like a muscle car. You know, the Penguin is just a fat guy. You know, Catwoman is just a cat burglar whose baklava happens to have seams that look like cat ears. Like, you're trying to do this grounded, gritty detective noir story, and yet C4 doesn't do shit. And there's another character, Alfred, gets blown up by a C4 bomb also. He's knocked out for a little bit longer. I mean, he's older. He's got maybe a couple cuts here and there. But spoilers, he wakes up perfectly fine later on. So I got some problems with this movie. Like, you can't, like, tell me this is the real take on Batman, and then, like, this is, like, because if you're doing, like, a wacky, if you're in, like, the superhero universe, which Batman doesn't have superpowers of any kind, but, like, or mention how, like, at some point have a character comment on, like, that bat suit can really take. You know, I mean, even in the Christopher Nolan ones, the bat suit wasn't impenetrable to a dog bite. You know, like if that Batman in the Christopher Nolan's Batman had been exploded with C4, I feel like they would have handled it in a more realistic fashion. First, I don't think they would have exploded him with C4 to begin with. Like, they would have thought, like, maybe that's a little bit too much. I mean, this movie even says, we use C4. So whatever. It's very ineffective C4. They don't even think about looking to see who the real Batman is until after he's laid out on the interrogation table at the precinct, not even a hospital. No IV, no nothing hooked up. Like, he was in an explosion at a funeral. Let's just all cross our fingers that he's just going to magically wake up. So there's some problems with it. But I did think, despite how dark it was, I did think it was well shot. There are some great shots in this movie There's like a lot of shots with skylines and the sky kind of as the backdrop to their silhouettes. I thought that was beautiful. There are some beautiful shots in this. The way the car chase scene with the penguin was, how that was shot, I thought that was great. I thought his performance as the penguin, what's his name? Colin Farrell, obviously great. Everybody, it's like the major thing people are promoting and talking about with this movie is how Colin Farrell disappears into this fat suit, which I have a problem with the fact that he's even in a fat suit to begin with. I mean, yeah, his performance was great. Yeah, it's probably the best looking fat suit that's ever been used in a movie, but it still looks like a fat suit. Like, there are still aspects to the way he moves and the way his chin, like, just there's just aspects that just have this uncanny valley that I don't buy. And it's like there's plenty of talented fat actors out there. Like, we're in a world where authenticity, we're in a movie that's trying to go for authenticity, and the use of fat suits is kind of baffling. Like, I get it. Colin Farrell, great actor. But, you know, if the penguin was black and they did a realistic looking pigmentation of him to make him look black, a la like Tropic Thunder or whatever, it wouldn't be received well. It would definitely not be the thing that's used as marketing material like this movie is. It's like, oh, we made an attractive man look ugly and fat. This is the best makeup ever. We made somebody that doesn't look ugly and fat look ugly and fat, and he's a good actor too. So it's all great. It's the best thing that Hollywood's ever done. Got a problem with it. Got a problem with that. But still, it's one of the best Batman movies. You know, that's just how bad Batman movies are. Sadly. There are far more misses than hits. I actually only think there's one movie that's like almost a perfect movie in the Batman, which I'm going to do a top 5 of on Sunday, the end of the week. So look to see which movie I think is the only really the one movie that I really don't have any problems with at all. Which all the other ones, it's basically which one's the least worst is the list of Batman movies. But yeah, also great acting, great casting in this. Robert Pattinson, you know, despite the fact that he's super emo, looks like he should be in Requiem for a Dream. Still thought he was a good Batman. Aside from the fact there's a scene where he's like pushing a giant table across the floor so he can spray paint the evidence together instead of the traditional pinning photos to a wall and then using string to attach everything. He decides to use the entire floor of one of the rooms of his mansion, and he pushes the table out of the way. Just really looks like a meth head pushing a table out of the way. Like, doesn't really look like a buff superhero guy. Definitely cut up, but he's a very thin dude. As opposed to like Christian Bale, how he looked. Just even compare. I mean, we never saw Michael Keaton with his shirt off, but Michael Keaton looked like he had more strength than Robert Pattinson. At least, I don't know. We never really see Keaton. Even the horrible actor of Ben Affleck got jacked for the role, put on some mass. Where Robert Pattinson just kind of looks like Robert Pattinson. Just he's thin, and very like low body fat percentage, but not a lot of bulk to him. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. Zoe Kravitz, I thought, was great. Just the way she moved her body, it really felt like it really, despite the fact that Catwoman is a very realistic, grounded take, I felt the way that she portrayed Catwoman made that kind of idea of her being Catwoman. Compared to Anne Hathaway in Batman or The Dark Knight Rises, where she plays Catwoman, very kind of similar takes on the Catwoman. They both have, just a piece of equipment that kind of gives them the cat ears that isn't really supposed to be cat ears. But I think just the body movements, the body acting, the physical acting of Zoe Kravitz pulled it off better. I also like Jeffrey Wright as Lieutenant Gordon, despite the fact that he's doing the Batman voice the entire movie. The entire movie. I mean, maybe there's a scene or two where he is not doing the Batman voice, but he is doing the Batman voice. And there are a lot of scenes with him and Batman where they're both doing the Batman voice to each other, and there's no reason. Like, I could understand because it's kind of a low, growly whisper, but all their scenes together, they're not around people. A lot, aside from like when they're actually at crime scenes or whatever, but a lot of the meetings that they have, they're alone on some abandoned room on top of abandoned building, and it's just they're both doing the Batman voice to each other, and there's no reason for it. Like, just speak normally. You're not around anybody, even if they are at a crime scene. You're not keeping secrets from anybody. Just speak normally. Kind of a problem. Paul Dano was great as the Riddler. The Riddler's outfit and costume, how that all came together. When you see like the chat room that kind of that helped him get everything together and became like his goons. I thought that was great. Paul Dano's great in everything. And John Turturro is amazing. I love John Turturro in every single thing he's done. One of the greatest actors of our time by far. By far, this guy elevates everything that he's in. And he plays Carmine Falcone, who's a character that's been in other Batmans. I think this is probably the best Carmine Falcone. And despite the fact that Colin Farrell is the Penguin, like, I still think, probably, no, it's not the best Penguin, that's for sure. It's an interesting take, though. Peter Sarsgaard plays the DA. I thought he was great, kind of a believable dirtbag. Andy Serkis plays Alfred. I like Andy Serkis. For whatever reason, didn't really buy him as Alfred. I mean, it's hard to top previous Alfreds, but Andy Serkis didn't, and he survived a C4 explosion within the same room. Kind of crazy. So I like the casting of this movie. I enjoyed that. I thought all the performances were great. They did great stuff. Let's see. The end of this movie, because I never read the comics of Batman. But apparently this was a take from a series of comics, whatever, where Gotham is below sea level, which is a thing that's mentioned early in the movie to set up the fact that it's like to set up the fact that the end, like, this is how they're going to get Gotham, is to flood it. There's a seawall, like they speak of the seawall early on in the movie. And I think it's just crazy that there would be this giant city, whether it's Chicago or D.C. or New York or any major city that Gotham is trying to be a replica of. I would assume it's trying to be somewhere on the East Coast. It has that vibe of like East Coast. I can't imagine they would build a city so big under sea level. Like, I know of New Orleans, is under sea level, but that's not a giant metropolis type of a city. That would just be crazy to build a giant city under sea level. So despite the fact that I get, it works for what the mastermind of the Riddler is trying to do to flood the city, it's, I don't know, it's just kind of like, it doesn't make sense why it would be there to begin with. Like, there's so many other creative ways you could do than just, we're going to put the city below sea level. And, of course, there's going to be bombs that go off to flood everything. But, go past that, and it's an interesting take. It's an interesting way to, have stakes in the movie. The end scene is pretty great, where, like, Batman becomes, like, the savior of Gotham. Sacrificing himself, which is a similar thing that Batman's done in other movies. But it's in a lot of ways it's Batman Returns, but like a more grounded version of Batman Returns. Like if Batman Returns was directed by the guy that did Seven and Zodiac, and I'm blanking on his name right now. It's not Christopher Nolan. It's gosh, what's his name? His name is Robert Paulson. His name, David Fincher. Horrible. David Fincher. It feels like if David Fincher went back in time, like today's David Fincher would probably do a better job. But it's like if David Fincher directed Batman Returns instead of the guy that did direct it. Batman Returns is directed by Tim Burton. It has that vibe to it. Which is interesting, but it clearly feels like an impression. Like the mystery, the clues, all of those things weren't as satisfying as the movies that it's trying to imitate. Like the investigation of Zodiac, way better, like vibe to like, because it feels like, even in Seven, it feels like as they're investigating it, they are putting themselves in trouble. Like you can tell in those movies that it's like they're getting closer and closer to evil, which you don't get that feeling. Whether it's because it's a superhero and it's Batman, Batman's not going to die. You just nobody really dies in this movie. Even Alfred. I mean, people survive C4 explosions. It's not going to have those stakes. You never really feel like, oh no. There's a moment at the end where Batman gets electrocuted and it's like an oh no moment, but it only lasts for a second. It's like a fake oh no moment. So it's a fake oh no moment almost as much as the whatever Star Wars that was. I think it was the last Star Wars, where the J.J. Abrams one, where there's a ship that explodes and you think that Chewie is on that spaceship and you think Chewie dies, but then like just a second later he's right there. It's like a complete fake. It's manipulative and weak. It's a very weak way of trying to manipulate somebody, just to make them think that for no reason other than to just fake them out. It kind of has that, but I enjoyed it overall. Surprisingly, like, despite the fact that I had problems with it, it's just, especially once I saw all of the other Batman movies, like, they all have problems. All of them except for one. They all have problems. And I think what this is trying to do in a lot of ways kind of overcompensates enough for the problems. And also, long. 3 hours? 3 hours? Like, all the Batman movies are over 2 hours anyway. Don't get me wrong. They're all very long. But 3 hours? Do we have to do every movie? Warner Brothers. Does every movie have to be 2.5 hours plus? Like, do we have to follow the Zack Snyder rules of, I mean, I guess some of the Nolan movies were 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours, so they're kind of long as well. But, like, come on. You can cut so much. Like, they could cut characters. Like, the Catwoman character, despite being cool, despite having kind of a, like, she's the daughter of Falcone, but, like, doesn't know that he is, like, evil. Like, there's aspects to her character that are like, really? You sure? She could have been cut. The Joker could have been, or the Penguin could have been cut. This almost had a scene with the Joker in it. I mean, it kind of does at the end in Arkham Asylum, but there's a deleted scene where Batman goes to interview the Joker or talk to the Joker. So it could have even had more characters, but it just felt like at times they were trying to do too much. But overall, I liked it. I'm not, like, obsessed. Like, there's people that are obsessed with this movie. Like, this is the best movie ever made, ever. It's really weird how absolutely passionate people can be over some of the most mediocre stuff. And not that this is mediocre, but, like, it's not perfect. Come on. It's like, I know you've seen other movies. This isn't the best movie you've seen. But anyway, I enjoyed it overall. And check it out if you haven't. The Batman. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at InspiredDisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at InspiredDisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.